talk show. Stay tuned. Almost 14% of the U.S. population are Americans seeking the American dream. Being a first-generation American is a unique experience, and that's an experience that my next guest and I both share. The reason I felt compelled to have this discussion on our latest episode is to bring awareness to an extraordinary circumstance that people face just to follow their American dreams. For a long time as a kid, I was ashamed of my African heritage, and I did everything I could to Americanize myself. You know, I wouldn't invite friends to the house, and I even allowed so-called friends to make fun of my African accents in front of me. It wasn't until later on in life that I went to college and I finally embraced my African culture. I tell this experience so that it doesn't take others so long to embrace theirs. My next guest is a Boston University graduate who was born in the US, but his parents were immigrants of India. He is a former corporate professional who transitioned his talents from corporate America to MBA journalism. He is the co-founder of Baller Circle Inc., and he's a great friend of mine. I'd love to welcome Amir Ali. Hey, Amir, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, Newton. It's a pleasure to be talking to you. I appreciate the invitation on the league. It meant a lot when you thought of me after having Byron, Mr. Steve Williams, and your fiance on. So I'm doing well.
Oh, man, I appreciate you. How are you and your family holding up during COVID?
Everything actually, surprisingly, we've been very fortunate. I know a lot of family friends have been dealing with cases in their own family. My family, fortunately, we haven't had any cases. We've stayed pretty safe, and it's been nice. We've spent a lot of extra time together, everyone working remotely. So really no complaints on this end other than that, we're kind of cooped up and ready to start living a normal life again like the rest of the country, right?
It's hard, man. It's challenging. We don't know what's going to happen, but one beautiful thing out of the whole equation is the family time, and now we're able to do things online like what we're doing now.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, I feel like that so many podcasts and so many shows started just having this time and giving us time to connect with one another, share our platforms, get to know one another. I think it's actually been a blessing in disguise. You got to take the positive out of every situation. So
you're right. And you're right. And you and I have a connection going into our topic for today, which of course is being a first generation American. And what most people may or may not know, first generation American means being born a natural citizen of a country. However, your parents are of foreign descent. Right. And so I know for me, I grew up in two different environments simultaneously. Mm-hmm. In the outside world, I'm in the US. I'm going to school speaking English. I'm adopting the American food, the culture. And then as soon as I get home, I'm in the African culture because my parents are from the Congo, right? And so now I'm eating African food. My grandmother, too, she was 100 years old. And she didn't speak any English. So I had to learn the language, but also speak it at home, which is called Lingala. And it was a very interesting dynamic for me, at least, because of the fact that, you know how it is as a first generation American, you're trying to navigate who you are. You're trying to find who you are, and you're in two different cultures. And it's scary. I know I personally, my last name is pronounced Mayenge, but to be more engulfed in the American culture, I changed it to Mange to make it sound more American.
Did you change the spelling at all, or just like, hey, my name is Newton Mayenge?
I didn't change the spelling at all, but I did change how it was pronounced. So it was a little difficult navigating. Yourself, how was it for you? What did you have similar experiences?
Oh man, I'm sure we can all connect in that same level. I mean, growing up, I realized that I gravitated more towards first generation Americans because we kind of shared at least a similar narrative, a similar fabric at home, things that necessarily aren't tangible, but you feel walking, your interactions, trying to figure out and navigate this country. Because much like yourself, my parents came here, they moved to South Carolina in the early 1990s.
Okay.
They came with probably, like one suitcase, no money and no family. I mean, to this day, I don't have any relatives in this country. We have very distant relatives, but all my aunts, cousins, and uncles, they're actually abroad. So we would go back every single summer, almost every single summer, to go and spend time with my grandparents, spend time with my cousins, spend time with my aunts and uncles, or else I would have never had that connection.
Wow.
Meanwhile, being here, it's like all we had was my mother, my father, and my two brothers. So we really only had each other. And I can say that the positives of that were that my friends meant so much more to me, in terms of that they kind of took the placeholders of that extended family. They were kind of my relatives, my cousins, their parents. I mean, they treated me like I was a son or a nephew. And that holds to this day. And that's kind of really a positive thing that came out of that experience. But that's not to say it was always easy, right? Like, I think that number one is that when our parents come and they emigrate from one country to another, they come with nothing, and they come with a huge ambition that necessarily can't be actualized in their lifetime or their work, but it's a generational process. So the work ethic that they put into all of us, and I can speak from my own experience from the time I was a kid, 7, 8 years old. I mean, my dad had me work very hard. And at the time, you didn't understand, like, why do I have to be an excellent student, excellent at everything I do, whether it was sports, being a student, my relationships with people, my relationships with my teachers, mentors. Why did all that matter? And it's because you're building one block upon another. And that's really kind of the narrative of being a first generation American. You're trying to build a family in a different country where they have no support system. So you're really building that foundation. And I mean, with that, there's so much we can talk about. But I'm curious, is all that kind of ring true with you as well? Especially, we grew up in different parts. Being from Boston and North Carolina, I don't know if there was. I think it's a little more diverse down there as well. So I'm not quite sure. Do we kind of share a story in that regard?
We do, because I went to the University of North Carolina, and it was more diverse. However, once again, no one could understand the culture battles constantly, daily, unless you were in that, unless you were just that person. And so I know when I went to college, it kind of shaped my path, so to speak. And I started getting involved in the Black student movement, and that started to help me to understand, being around more diversity, was I need to embrace my African side. I need to embrace who I am and where I'm from, where my parents are from, and the heritage and the history. Also accepting that I'm American also. And that helped me to, like you said, the work ethic, the understanding that our parents wanted us to be better, the understanding that our parents pushed us even more so to not just accept mediocrity.
That word, embracing your identity, it's so big for us because, like you said, you had kind of two lives. You had the American life, which is normal, that everybody lives here, goes to school. But at least for me, my primary community wasn't my friends at school. It just couldn't be the case because for our families, they needed a support system. So they have so many family friends from the same culture, same religion, same background. And that's a wide network. Everybody shares that common piece of kind of being alone in this country and kind of missing home.
Yeah.
So for me, my biggest friend circle, my biggest community was outside of school, was outside of sports, outside of everything else. It was about those that shared the same tongue, the same food, and the same values. And that kind of became the foremost part of my life that has been continuous to today. But that's not to say it was always easy in school to embrace that side because, you could be viewed a certain way, not cool, whatever it is. I mean, it's just tough as kids. When you look a little different psychologically, you recluse, you hold yourself back. You kind of feel as if either you're the odd person out or, you should be a little quieter. And I guess particularly we can go into more depth about my experience being a first generation American, but also in the post 9/11 era, that really affected my family and my whole background. Because as you know, like my whole culture, my whole religion just came under combat, because of the actions of some crazy people that would like to use the name of the religion, the name of our background to kind of justify what they're doing. So that added a whole different dynamic to the first generation experience of like, all right, culturally, you're already a minority. Now, religiously, you got to keep silent. Like no one should know what your religion is, or no one should know what your background is, or if your family practices your religion or not. And I mean, that kind of kept me Ziploc tight for many years. And I'd say until I went to high school, I wasn't really fully comfortable with who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it took some experiences in high school. It took some right friends. But when you overcome that hump of embracing your identity, I mean, you don't look back. You just have this whole different swagger. You have this whole different kind of confidence. You have this whole different demeanor that it's just like the wheels start turning. And I mean, life becomes kind of easy in that regard. When you finally feel free, you can just kind of embrace yourself, be yourself, and, you know, live life the way everyone else was kind of comfortable with.
Being an immigrant and coming to the U.S., not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, that's a big deal. And that's a huge
Yeah.
transitional period that you have to adjust to. I know my father, he came here in like 1970 and he was a doctor overseas.
Oh,
Yeah, he was a doctor overseas. And then all of a sudden he comes here and his education is not even honored. So he went from being a doctor to he's washing dishes. And that was like,
that's crazy.
just imagine that's a big deal. That's like, wow. But, you know, he embraced it and he literally re-educated himself here. Became an MD here, brought my mother and siblings here. And this was before I was born, but then got deported, which was crazy. That's a long whole nother topic.
Wow.
But just those struggles is crazy, which leads me to my next point. You did a piece on Mac Tarjai, UNC
My
alum.
God.
That's my guy, man.
That's everybody's guy. He got like 5,000.
Man, that dude is so popular. It's crazy, man.
I've never met anybody more popular. It's crazy.
And, you know, he immigrated from Senegal to ultimately becoming an NBA player.
Right.
How did that story start for you?
Oh man, I mean that whole path has been such a blessing. I know we've touched upon it kind of briefly before, but to get to Mactar, there were a lot of other steps I had to take, and I know that it kind of goes back to when I was finishing school. I did my graduate degree after my undergraduate, so I went back to school, did my MBA in entrepreneurship, and after finishing that program, I was taking some time off, and I really just wanted to get a job that I liked. I had done so many jobs in the summers, internships here in Boston that for some reason it just felt like I was forcing myself to go in, make a buck, and go home and get some good experience. So in that time, I was just soul searching, and I mean, my passion is people, relationships, and I love the NBA. So one day I decided to go with my brother to New York and just drop by the league office, the NBA league office in Manhattan, with my resume and see if there's any takers, because I know I apply to jobs online. Who knows where that goes? That you never hear back.
Yeah.
You know, especially with the NBA, that you have applicants from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to New York, being from Boston. Me and my brother went down, and literally my mentality was, this is a high riser building. So I'm going to wait for someone to come outside the tower, whether they're going to smoke a cigarette or they're going to go to lunch. And I'll recognize them before, you know, you can tell whether they're wearing an NBA t-shirt, something like that. I'll take my guess, have a conversation, drop my resume off, and be like, man, I really want to work in the NBA. So lo and behold, the first person I saw when I got out of the subway is someone from my high school.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was crazy. He was a starter on the basketball team from his freshman year. So he was big time, and he was working at an investment company, some real estate company actually in New York. And I saw him, and the first person I told why I'm there, quickly, he's like, hey, you remember XYZ? He actually works for the Philadelphia 76ers under Elton Brand. I was like, whoa, I mean, I don't even need to go to the league office anymore. What's his number? And that's kind of how that whole path started. And I'd say for the next like 6 to 8 months, phone call after phone call, hustle after hustle. In between then, I went to Philadelphia. I went to Dallas, Texas to meet with Miles Turner and his camp about some business proposals. I had some engagements with Rock Nation and their head of basketball. I had an idea. I really wanted, me and my friend Imran, who started the Baller Circle with me, we really wanted to talk to Rock Nation about this opportunity, specifically with Josh Hart, because he's a big-time gamer. All these things, they went very far. Everything with Miles Turner went really well. Everything with Rock Nation went really well, but it always fell through. And this is about 10 months of me trying to find some way in the league. No one responded to my applications. My networking is going well. I'm getting more and more connections. People are starting to like me. They're kind of spreading my name about this kid Amir. Like, he's kind of got this idea, that idea. He's got some good energy. Let's try and give him a chance. And I DM'd Maktar on Instagram. I DM'd a lot of people. I DM'd probably upwards to 500, 600 people across the NBA, the NFL. I'm crafting every message, taking an hour. How can I make it seem serious, legit, not too overbearing, seem casual? I mean, I just didn't know it was going to work. And to Maktar's credit, I mean, he read the message about me wanting to do his story, being the first player from Senegal. And to his credit, the open heart he has that we both know, he said, I wrote a long message, and he responded by saying, sure, we can talk.
That sounds like Maktar.
Yeah. I mean, now we know he gets like how many hundreds of messages a day, right? Like from people he knows, forget people who he doesn't know. And so he took a chance on me, and actually his words to me were that, Amir, I drafted you. Like, I want to see you succeed. Like, I drafted you. Man, when I heard that, I'm like, I'm going to go to war for this guy. Like, he showed me love. He actually took a chance on me. I'm like the undrafted kid trying to find my way in the league, right? Didn't work out in the G League, went overseas. I'm getting my buckets. Nobody's noticing. I mean, my agent's making calls, and finally someone picks up. There you go.
Yes, sir.
Maktar gave me the 10-day contract. And then from then, all I had to do was hoop. So I'm like, man, well, I was like, what's your schedule? I know you're a scout. Maktar, he's a scout for the New York Knicks. So he's on the road every night. If you look at his IG stories in the fall, he'd be in Minnesota at midnight, Phoenix, Arizona at 10 a.m. Then he'd be in Denver the next day. So I'm tracking all this. And Imran actually lives in Salt Lake City. So I said, you know what? He only scouts the West Coast for like these next couple of months. I said, when you go to watch one of the Jazz games, let me know. I'll fly out from Boston. We can meet in person. We can develop that trust before we get started on your story. We did that. Took him out to a nice Indian restaurant in Salt Lake City. And
yes, sir.
Then, like, from that handshake, from that dap, from that hug, it's been brothers, uncles. He's like an uncle to me. He's like a brother to me, everything ever since. And, he opened up his world to me. He believed in me. He had me interview first Sonny Vaccaro, who was the person who signed Michael Jordan to Nike. He really started this whole sneaker game. And I think that was Maktar's test with me. That was Maktar trying to see, like, how can he handle this? I don't have journalism experience. I just know I know how to write. So after that went really well, I mean, he's like, hey, talk to Antoine Jameson tomorrow. Talk to another college teammate, Ademola, the next day. I don't know if you know Ademola. I'm sure you do. He's like, talk to him the next day. Yeah, exactly. He's like, talk to Shammond Williams, talk to Juwan Howard. And he just opened up his whole network, which really gave me a lot of practice to get confident in my game. Getting to know people, asking the right questions, and feeling out, like, what do I need to know to write this story? And, man, talking to those guys for the first time, it was surreal for me because, I had met Miles Turner, hung out with him while he was working out for Team USA. That was cool. But this was a whole nother level, like Antoine Jameson, Juwan Howard. These are not just basketball legends, but you look at Juwan Howard, he's a cultural legend. There's so much to unpack there. And I started writing pieces, and, for one reason or another, we wanted to release in January, but for one reason or another, we weren't able to do that. There was personal situation back home with me, then with one of the brothers I interviewed for the story, then, the tragic passing of Kobe Bryant. The time wasn't right. So, we just kept waiting. We're like, you know what? We don't want to be selfish and put out this exciting story, really giving a claim to Maktar when the world is grieving, especially after Kobe's death. We're like, you know what? We're grieving. Let's let the world grieve. Let's be sensitive to the world, and let's wait till well after All-Star break. So lo and behold, at this point, I'm just going to release 3 articles. Get my career started in the NBA. And Maktar calls me on one Wednesday after we're making our first initial posts about the story and that Juwan, Antoine, all these guys were involved. And he called me on a Wednesday. He's like, man, Amir, everybody's going crazy, man. Julius Randle just called me. Danny Green just called me. Man, we gotta get this out. I was like, wait, hold up, who called you? He's like Julius Randle, Danny Green, like everyone's excited. I'm like, ooh, okay, you know what? I was like, you know what? We gotta make this better. I knew Maktar was going to Senegal on Saturday. I didn't know exactly what date. So on Wednesday, I'm like, Maktar, when are you going to Senegal? He said, I'm leaving this Saturday, 10 a.m. out in New York City. I said, Maktar, I'm coming with you. We're gonna make a little film.
Wow.
He's talking to me. He's like, man, you crazy. What do you mean you're coming to Senegal? Like, don't you have work? Because I'm working full time as a consultant and some pharmaceutical stuff. I'm like, yeah, but like Fred Van Vliet said, bet on yourself. I'm going to buy the right equipment and I'm going to come out to Senegal. We're going to show them Africa. We're going to show them where you grew up. Because honestly, they're not going to enjoy the written pieces. They're too long. Like, like all this hype, they want a movie. Like, that's how, content's engaging when it's video. People read, but it's not as engaging anymore. So I needed to really capitalize on the excitement. So lo and behold, that Wednesday, I bought a ticket to Senegal. I was working a ton, just trying to get work done before the next week. I'm talking to videographers here, like, man, what camera do I need to buy? Like, I never made a video before. I only ever took Snapchats. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I trust in myself. And it came down to, you know what? Go to Apple, buy an iPhone 11, buy a gimbal that stabilizes as you make videos.
Okay.
And then that should be, buy a couple mics, but sound quality is good. It's a little bit more easy to learn in 48 hours than understanding the whole camera.
Yeah.
So I did all of that, went to Apple, bought an iPhone 11, bought the stabilizer, bought the mics, made sure everything was shipped in by a certain time on Friday because I had to go to New York for the flight to Senegal the next day. And lo and behold, I mean, I took a bunch of footage. I was literally there for 65 hours because I had to come back and catch a flight to LA on Wednesday. So I'm in Senegal from Sunday, 10 a.m. to Tuesday, 10 p.m. And then I had to fly straight to Boston, straight to LA. And lo and behold, me and Maktar had a great time. Got to meet his whole family, got to see the whole neighborhood he's from, just really got embraced by the culture. And here we are today. I mean, that film was just, that's how I got to know you. People loved it. It really opened up a lot of doors. And just from a simple thing of just taking a chance on yourself, it's really been a blessing.
Wow, that's crazy, brother. You are a success story. I mean, literally, because you're betting on yourself. And that goes back to our family. That goes back to our history of being African-American, being Indian-American, that work ethic. You started to seek the things that you wanted and you visualized it and you went to go attain it by, reaching out to various people. It's a numbers game, right? The more people you reach out to, eventually somebody's going to say, okay, let me take a chance on you.
My parents always said that. It's always a numbers game. Apply to as many things as you can. Reach out to as many people as you can. One leaf is going to fall. And you know what? Maktar is a great example of that. I mean, he played in the NBA. He played overseas. But he's in his mid-40s, hungry, climbing, still to be a general manager in the NBA. And like, when I mean he's hungry, I mean, this brother doesn't sleep. And I know you don't sleep either, So it's
we
like.
talked about that this morning.
We did. I mean, you telling me you sleep 3-4 hours a night. I mean, you tell that to the average person, that's like a third of their sleep, not even half. So it all comes back to just that hunger and that grind. And, Maktar being an immigrant, we tried to capture that in the story of just how hungry he was to change the life of his family. He didn't even see himself being a professional basketball player. He didn't even want to play in the NBA. Actually, he didn't even play basketball to start out with. He played soccer. And he didn't get picked one day. So he just walks over to the basketball court, and he's a 6'9" guy. He was a tall guy, so they picked him. And I mean, he's cold. I mean, his jump shot, especially in the time he played, I look at videos of him like playing. His jump shot was cold. Like, that's just natural talent, and hard work.
And that was before you had the quote unquote stretch four.
Right, exactly. I mean, Jerry Stackhouse was telling me, because I interviewed him as well. He
Mm-hmm.
was like, McIntyre, if he played in the NBA today, oh man, he'd be a perfect fit because he
He was
sets
cute.
those rough screens. Like he'll bust you up,
Mm-hmm.
and then he'll pop out. He'll get the ball. It's wet. It's easy, you know.
And he played in an era too, under Coach Dean Smith, iconic. Um,
Right,
so I mean, and the crazy part is he played in all these different programs that were so legendary, from Michigan
right.
to Wake Forest to UNC, and just the impact that he had being the first Senegalese player to ever be in the NBA.
All it takes is that first person, and that can't be understated enough because of just the ability to dream and the infrastructure it sets up.
And guess what? You're helping change everyone's life too, because you're first generation. You're first generation, and now you're creating a path for others to follow that will look up to you the same way they're looking up to you now, brother. And
Yeah,
I'm excited to see where Baller Circle goes, where you take it. What do you see the future being for Baller Circle?
man, that's a good question. If I can give you the most honest answer, I think you touched upon it. Like the future for the baller circle for me is merely to be an illustration and representation of hope, especially for my people, especially
Wow.
to like know that you don't need to just be locked into certain jobs, working in finance, being an engineer, being a doctor. If you want to work in the NBA, although not many of us do, you can do it. And I want to just break that barrier just for that reason, right? You don't need to just be a fan. You can be a part of the action if you truly, truly want it. So that's the first, really, the inspiration of what I want to see Baller Circle do is to be an example of hope. Beyond that, I want to create an environment for the players where they can really speak their core and their truth about them to their heart, not just the headlines that you hear that a player did XYZ or a player is this type of person, A, B, C, D, because he may have made this mistake, made that mistake. Because really, man, getting to know these NBA players and former NBA players, they really are different and they really have such hearts of gold. It just takes the right person to be able to access it and to share it with the world. And I think in my first couple of stories, we were able to do that for Jeff McGinnis and for Maktar. And there's some current NBA players I'm talking to now that I'm just astounded by the type of human being they are, how selfless they are. And I think by being able to capture that and share with the world, there's two benefits. Number one, it's for the athletes. They can become a little bit more comfortable, less anxious about their image. That really affects their daily life. I mean, have one beacon of light in the media they can actually trust. But number
Yes.
two, it really takes away that cloak between the normal fan and the athlete, where these athletes did an incredible thing, right? They had a dream since they were the age of 7, 8,
Mm-hmm.
and they were able to achieve it, which only a handful of people in the world can say that they were ever able to do. We all have dreams, right? Little Newton, little Amir, our friends who we grew up on the block with. How can we create an inspiring narrative where the normal person can understand that whatever your dream is, it doesn't need to be NBA, it doesn't need to be Hollywood. I mean, it could be that you want to create like a shop on the corner of your block and provide for your people and be able to see the people you grew up around every single day and take care of them. It could be that you want to get a job that's sufficient enough to take care of your family and also gives you quality time to spend with them and take care of your parents, take care of your children. Whatever your dream is, there's no reason you can't achieve it.
And you know something? That's the true American dream.
It is. It is.
You couldn't have said it any better. And I'm excited of what you're doing because, playing ball overseas, then I was also a sports agent back in the day. You didn't have platforms like that. It was either what the media portrayed, and that was it. And so now you're giving that voice to these athletes. I'm excited to see what Baller Circle holds as far as the future. I'm excited to see what you're doing. I'm very grateful that we are able to connect and have these conversations. And the layers are so deep from where we've come from, where our parents have come from, the legacy that they started being here, bringing us here. to what we're continuing. The sky's the limit. And then we have kids. I mean, just imagine. You're making history, brother.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you know what? We could say you're making history, I'm making history, but it really is our parents that made history. Because Lord knows you and I couldn't pick up and go move to Japan, start a life. We could say we could. We don't speak the language. We don't know the people. We're just following in the footsteps of the real heroes who took a risk, paved that path. And I think another connection we have as a first generation American is our life is about our parents and paying it back to them. That's at the core of what we do. We appreciate them, we love them, and that's what it's all about, really.
Absolutely, brother. And I want to give a special shout out to RUCC. They're one of our sponsors. I'm wearing one of the shirts, the league. Check them out on there. Check them out on their Instagram at RUCC32. Other than that, brother, I'm so excited that we had this conversation. Where can people follow you to continue to watch Baller Circle and you?
Oh, man. First of all, I appreciate you having me. If you go to Baller Circle Inc. on Instagram, you'll see our Instagram. Baller Circle 1 is on Twitter. We haven't really used Twitter as much, but me and my guy Imran will definitely get to it. Instagram is already doing really well. And definitely we have some cool stories coming out. And just so you know, Newton, I'm definitely doing a piece on your whole journey, the whole basketball thing we talked about. People don't know about the summer league, but we'll let that stay quiet for a bit. But we're definitely going to share that story. And hey, just so people know watching the show, Newton has that path of never giving up. There have been trials and tribulations here in this country, overseas, unexpected devastation, and look, he's still grinding, right? He's still grinding to this day, but he's happy. He's living his dream, and we'll definitely share that with the world.
Brother, you are an inspiration not only to a lot of folks, but to me too.
Oh, man.
Thank you so much, Amir. Guys, you got me tearing up, brother. you got me tearing up.
Guys, it's all love, man.
Guys, this is Amir Ali, Baller Circle. Please check them out. He's doing amazing stories. Jeff McGinnis is coming up and more to come. Jeff is a UNC alum as well. Brother, anything I can do to help and support, I'm always there. I appreciate you coming to the league.